Alright, kind of a response video to the economics discussion that's been going on between the modernistic great text and Remy. Remy's made some videos. And so I'll play a part of Remy video just because he's a good example of how not to think, how not to use your brain logically. But the other two aren't doing any better. This is going to be a subject that's going to be talked to death in the next few months, few years, because, everything's, the slate's sort of going to have to get erased, and if we're going to survive, there's going to have to be some kind of new theory on how human beings live, new economic theory. So Nick has sort of just said, it's too much for me in his last video. I can't think through this crap. But he's done what I knew long ago. And just throwing a little cheap rhetoric out there that somehow it's our human nature to be owned by capitalism, to be owned by the rich, that hierarchy is somehow in our nature, that we like being slaves, and that anything else is imposed upon us. It's like unions, well, that was imposed upon the workers. They had that imposed upon them draconianly by some evil force that forced them to organize and demand to be treated like human beings. But anyway, I won't get into that rhetoric. When Nick starts talking that shit, I'm glad he has disowned me, or whatever he's done, excommunicated me from the world of mysticalism and nickery. So fuck that shit. It's not in our nature to live in a shitty, stupid, unorganized system where we're exploited and abused. Fuck that. As for Great Text, his last video I saw was completely idiotic. Basically said, I just play a lot of head games, I rag on every system, I don't give a fuck about talking about the details of anything because all I give a shit about is this hierarchy crap, and it's all hierarchy shit. It's just useless bullshit. Anybody's going to tell me they just been talking trash for no good reason, fuck you then, you're wasting my motherfucking time. If you're playing fucking head games and you can't fucking say something directly and honestly, then don't say nothing at all. At least don't expect me to watch your bullshit. Alright, put a big fat label on it. Guess what, 90% of this or 80% or 70% of this is complete bullshit, or something like that. Because fuck you, you're wasting time. This leaves Remy, who's, an insane capitalist, but he's conceding now, I suppose, that, I guess it did make some mistakes because it wasn't regulated enough to keep the cheaters from cheating. But it goes beyond that. The cheat is in the design of the system itself. Nobody's getting it, but it's so fucking obvious what's been wrong with human civilizations from their fucking origin, and that is the consolidation of power, ownership, and control. Alright? That's it. Alright? It isn't earned. It doesn't go to people based on any merit system. It's not a merit system. They've never been merit systems. They've been legacy systems. And that's the flaw. No, it doesn't make any sense at all. You don't engineer something that's stupid. That's the first fucking thing you would fix, is to make sure that somehow there isn't an obvious unfairness. And nepotism creates obvious unfairness. If you allow nepotism to run your economic system, you're fucked. It's just stupid. And so, it's not about hierarchies. It's about fucking ownership, and it's about how that's acquired, how control is distributed. All right? And all you have to do to have a rational system is to do it in some kind of efficient and moderated way, some kind of control system. Ugh. Well, anyway, so we'll go through it. So I'll play the Remy tape just because it's pretty funny. His rhetoric is it's the end of his second video, and he's talking about Nambimbi and or Nairobi or whoever and Tanzania, and its failure as a socialism. I'll play the tape.
In fact, as an undergrad, even as a Marxist, but for any socialist with a brain, looking around the world in the 1980s had to be a pretty disconcerting experience.
I love that. You see his rhetoric. Any socialist with a brain, he's always got to throw in some sort of just gratuitous I don't even know. It's not a talking point. It's just an ad hominem of some kind. This disparaging innuendo that doesn't serve any purpose. Like, oh, any decent human who's not a child molester couldn't possibly be a capitalist. It's just the kind of slimy way to bend and twist the fucking argument that doesn't serve any purpose. I mean, it's just manipulative rhetoric. And as people are supposed to respect that as argumentation, fuck you.
In Eastern Europe, Stalinism had entered its terminal crisis. In the Soviet Union, Gorbachev's attempts to restructure the Soviet economy, perestroika, were coming to nothing. And
well, you shouldn't even bring up the Soviet Union. Don't you think it's a little bit of a complex dynamic, especially under Gorbachev? Because Gorbachev basically broke socialism in the Soviet Union, all right? Because he tried to turn it into some bastardization, all right? And the Soviet system was already broken because it had the same problem. And it had consolidated wealth, power, and control. It wasn't socialism. Okay, it was a command economy in the worst sense of the word. I mean, the people that owned weren't the people who earned. So again, wrong, fail, whatever. But yeah, I mean, it was the move to capitalism that fucked socialism under Gorbachev.
Then it became clear that the Soviet system wouldn't be able to manage the repercussions of glasnost. In China, Mao...
They couldn't manage the repercussions of us giving Osama bin Laden weapons so he could fuck over the Soviet Union in fucking Afghanistan. That's what he couldn't fucking manage. Just as we can't manage the war we're now in the Middle East. Isn't it ironic that our system is going to display its failure after it got involved in the Middle East in a war? Isn't that ironic? I mean, the Soviet Union was ruined by Afghanistan, and we are going to be ruined by Iraq. I mean, that's going to be the symbolic ruin, anyway.
To the beginnings of the experiments in market-based reforms under Deng Xiaoping. In Latin America, the different kind of left-leaning populist models had all run aground on the rocks of international debt and structural adjustment.
Yeah, and the fact that we were financing opposition and doing everything we could to fuck with those countries. Why didn't you bring up Indonesia? And the fact that we screwed them over, too, deliberately with our economic system, that our rich bastards, our people who inherited their money, decided to ruin that economy, and did so quite effectively. So, quit playing these games, Remy. It is not as black and white as this idea of failure. I'll use this as the point to just interject some things. I mean, we all know Thomas Edison. I think most people understand that it took him years to develop the light bulb, to make it work. Thousands of experiments. Thousands. Now, if he would have stopped at a few hundred experiments, there would be no light bulb. All right, and everybody would say the concept is a failure. It can't be done. It's impossible. All right, and then there's Dr. Ehrlich, the guy who invented chemotherapies. I think he invented that term. And he cured syphilis, right? It took him 10 years to be able to take, not strict arsenic, and, combine it with another chemical to allow it to kill the microbes inside of people. And, really brilliant that he, but it took him years. It took him 606, I think, as the number, of experiments before he got it right. So if he would have stopped at 600, oh, it's a failure. You can't cure a disease with a chemical. You can't, And so this is the bullshit of this rhetoric. It doesn't mean anything. Why don't you talk? You got to talk about the engineering. Explain how. If you're going to tell somebody they can't fly to the moon, talking this bullshit rhetoric is nothing. You got to explain why it's impossible, why it can't happen that way. All right, but this stupid rhetoric that look, that was a failure and that was a failure. Therefore, anything that has anything in common with those two things must be a failure. I mean, bullshit on that.
And in Africa, African socialism had been a failure, just an unqualified route.
Unqualified. See, that's the key word there again. And you're going to qualify it, though, later in your statement, which is kind of funny. But you're going to qualify it by pointing out that, oh, yes, but the people were more educated than ever, and they lived 10 years longer. So you're gonna ignore those things, and maybe that the other quality of life aspects of the average citizen's life might have been improved, but you'll ignore those qualifications